right. I am one that likes timeliness. So, thank you for being here on time. We'll probably have some more people come in. However, we might as well get going. Hopefully, this generates some optimism or at least some buzz about the season. I think we all need a little bit of momentum. I know a lot of us had twinges or larger amounts of depression that we kind of experienced fourth quarter, and going into this season with the thought process that it's going to be different makes it a little bit harder to get prepared and ready for the season. So I just attempted to think of all of the possibly good things that we could potentially think about here in order to look forward to a season that will be like no other. I believe you can see my presentation screen. The thought process is to go over there. This isn't something you're going to need to write down much of, and I can't see the chat when I'm on the PowerPoint. So if you've got ideas or it generates other ideas, brainstorm those in the chat function. I imagine I won't cover the whole hour here, so there'll be good time to kind of chat about some of these things or other things that I'm missing, including the concept of those who have experience with online tournaments and those who have experience with tournaments outside of Indiana might be able to share some of their success stories and the pitfalls to avoid for the rest of us. So I've occasionally been accused of being an optimist. That's by both my students, by fellow coaches, competitors, etc. I tend to have a cheery outlook on life. So even when things are going tough, usually you'll see me there with a smile or at least determination to get through and make it the best possible. For this season, if you don't yet have a mantra, I recommend you find one. Chesterton High School, our principal literally every single day, probably about 10 times a day, says believe and achieve. My personal one, after I had twins 5 years ago, just a week earlier during Coach's Clinic one year, was Rashivada, which is a Indian principle of attempting to see the good in everything. When you have two babies who are literally screaming into both sides of your eardrums at the same time, it's very difficult to remember that there is good in everything, but there always is. So we're going to look at the ideas of what can possibly be good. And my experience as a debate coach at Chesterton High School for the past 18 years, it's always good to lead with your best argument. This is the one that I will absolutely win. This is the one that should excite all of us. This is the one that is no contest. We have no buses if we are online tournaments. You'll notice in this bulleted list that I quickly go through, some of these might sound very personal. Your list probably looks a little different than mine, but here's my list of things I'm going to enjoy about the concept of no buses. You don't have to fill out all those bus forms. You don't have to worry about whether the bus will show up. You don't need to worry about when the bus doesn't show up if you remembered to order the bus. No panic if the bus shows up earlier than you because you changed the time with the kids. No panic about whether you told the kids the right time. No waiting for kids while their parents pick them up from the bus. No deciding whether you're going to leave the kid because the bus and the rest of the team are there and you're not sure if the kid's actually showing up. No driving the bus for those of us that drive mini buses either all the time or all the time. You get to take a break from that. That means no driving the bus on ice. That means no driving the bus on only 4 hours of sleep after state speech. No students making out on the bus. No you worrying about students making out on the bus. No worrying about whether students are doing worse than making out on the bus. No trying to squeeze back there to stop the kids from making out on the bus. No, the bus seat got smaller, but in reality, it wasn't the bus seat that got smaller. No falling asleep on the bus, drooling, becoming a meme on your team when the kids take a picture of you. And yes, I have broken the mini bus at one point driving back from Iowa at 1 a.m. We pulled off the road because it would no longer go any further. And I had to call the very extremely scary guy in charge of transportation to come pick us up at 1 a.m. This alone should be something that we can look forward to this year. And it goes into a lot of other different things and different elements that are possibilities that are small things that while it won't make up for a different season, are going to be things that we can kind of look forward to this year. Chesterton High School started off with a very weird motivational speaker last year. We had a brand new superintendent, and I'm not sure why he hired this person. Turned out to be prophetic, though. She came in and said, we need to do less work. We need to spend less time at work. We need to spend more time with our family. Well, we did all of fourth quarter during quarantine. With an online season, there's going to be more time that we get to spend with our actual family. We all think of our students and our kids as a part of our extended family, but sometimes our actual families are neglected, whether that is your fur babies or whether that is babies that wake you up at 5 a.m. and won't go back to sleep. You're going to get to spend more time around your house. You already stayed home this weekend, whereas you would have been gone probably Thursday night, all of Friday, most of Saturday, getting back late Saturday night. And if you're like me, you don't have much energy left at that point. And so those 3 days are gone from your house. There's still time you're going to be judging. You're still going to be setting up tournaments. You're still going to be coaching. But think of all the travel time that you gain. The tournaments that start at 9 a.m., technically, you're only going to need to get up at 8 a.m. You're not going to have to get up for that hour-and-a-half bus ride. Instead, you're going to have that time, and you're really going to gain it on the way back because you are literally teleported home because you don't have that travel time away from your family with the kids. In between rounds, while you're checking in on students, you can also check in on your actual family. That gives you a huge amount of time where our wives, our husbands, our extended family, they miss us. There's going to be things that we're going to be able to take care of, be able to work, etc. If you're like me and you do a bunch of overnight tournaments, there's a massive amount of time gained where I'm going to get to spend more time with my actual family while still doing a good job with my students and my debate family. There's the opportunity here if you want to take it, and you can focus on what's bad and what's different, or you can look at opportunity to figure out what's new and what you've been neglecting over the years. I firmly believe that I'm going to become a better coach from this experience because I'm already starting to pay attention to different things. I always have trouble with the balance between focusing on competition and winning versus student experience. We always make sure, because I know to keep students and to make sure that the program is functional and working, they need to have a really good experience, and they need to have experiences. They need to be able to travel, they need to laugh, they need to joke, they need to be able to make mistakes. But it's very easy to get sucked into the competitive nature. There are significantly more serious things going on in the world right now and in our students' lives than what color ribbon they come home or the size of the trophy that they come home. Now, don't get me wrong, Chesterton's going to try to do well. All of your schools are. But this is definitely not the year to focus on the competitive aspect. If we refocus towards the educational experience element to it, we can reimagine practices, we can reimagine tournaments, and we can reimagine the debate experience for the better. We're going to focus on different skill sets. Speech, it sounds like there's going to be a lot of asynchronous tournaments. That means you're going to be teaching and coaching what the background should be, where they spin to that background, the blocking that happens towards it, and how close they get to the camera. In debate, I'm usually standing really far away from the judge, yet likely I'm going to be sitting almost exactly as I am now. If you're looking not at the presentation, but you're instead looking at me, there's a much bigger focus on eye contact. There's a much bigger focus on my facial expressions because judges are going to be able to see them more. I'm trying to work my hands in, even though I think you're not watching me and you're just watching the presentation. But my hands have to come up really, really high in a different location, almost into an awkward, we want to teach up by the shoulders. Instead, I don't need to worry about hand gestures at this point in time, but I need to coach something different. I need to coach those facial expressions. I'm excited to see what speech coaches do with blocking when they have one stationary camera and how close they decide to do it, how far they decide to do it. It's going to force them to focus and to think about different elements of the performance. Maybe because blocking is so difficult, we refocus back into storytelling, and does the cutting make sense? We're all going to have to look at different things than what we normally do. And when we come back into a regular season next season, we're going to have those elements that we're still looking for along with the elements we've always looked for. And that should make us better at this activity. We also need to focus on our students' well-being, on inclusion, on how much they can fit in. Kids are going to have a hard time with this, but there are going to be some kids that excel at this. There are kids who on my team who have balked about the travel time, that they just can't be away from the family. They need to be at home to at least semi-watch their younger brother and sister. It's possible that I could gain them. Costs for certain programs have been too high for certain kids to be able to get in. Costs should come down in this format, particularly for Indiana tournaments. As long as your school is one-to-one, they should be able to do this. So if we focus on how to help those kids and we focus more on their well-being instead why you won or lost and asking how you felt, it gives us a chance to become better coaches, better mentors, better teachers for them. The next reason that I thought of as to why to be optimistic about this season is honestly, no matter what happens, we can still have a season. My kids would like to have in-season tournaments, in-person tournaments. I'm trying to think of ways that I can do that. In my own thought process, it's got to be schools that are very, very local and close to me because it's got to be a small meet and parents need to be able to drive if they don't want kids on that school bus. Instead of holding people in the cafeteria and the judges' lounge, you probably need to hold schools together in large rooms, almost the way show choir does it. Instead of saying all of round one, go to your round online postings, you probably need to stagger events. And you need to make sure that the teachers whose rooms you're using are okay with that. That's a tall order. It's going to be difficult. We're going to attempt to do it for some of our local schools. We'll find out if people are able to dance with us and be able to do that. But even if everything's online, you can still do speech and debate. No one's going to argue that it's better. Probably you're not going to win the argument that it's as good, but it is significantly better than the alternative. I know everybody hurts last year for any senior speech kid that you had that was qualified for state. Those kids didn't get to do their last Indiana performance. Those that were lucky enough or able to get through to districts and nationals, they were able to have a capstone event. But last year's spring sports didn't. So anybody in softball, baseball, track, field, their entire seasons were canceled. Everything that they had worked for, typically in a varsity sport, your senior year is going to be your best one. Those kids had that ripped away from them and they went off to college and most of them weren't going to perform in their sport again. We can, no matter what happens here, no matter how bad the pandemic gets, give our kids some sort of activity, some sort of experience, and we keep that in mind. Instead of trying to make it as good or better than what it was, we just need to remember what the alternative is, and we're going to win this season if we do that. This year's Guard marching band, they've already had their season canceled. At our school, all they're doing is playing at the football game, which is not what they joined about the activity. That is not their favorite. I normally lose my Trojan Guard people for about the first 3 tournaments. I can look at that as an opportunity to gain those kids. As other programs, and if winter sports are knocked out, which it seems like they're not going to be, but if they were, that's honestly an opportunity to get kids into our programs that have never been there before. Get them through their first year. And then their second or third year, it's actually a little bit more manageable to manage a varsity sport or a varsity activity and still be a part of your team. Because we can have a season and some other organizations can't. A, we need to be grateful for that, but B, we can see it as an opportunity to maybe recruit some of those kids. And that gets into trying things. Now, I personally won't try all of these things. This presentation is about the idea of generating ideas and generating thoughts that you can bring back into your own program. So a couple of things to think about. Number one, you can play with your season schedule. We've always been tied to the IHSFA schedule that is tradition. We all know what the first weekend and the first tournament we like to prepare for are. But some of our schools aren't in school yet. Some of our clubs or teams aren't able to meet yet. It doesn't mean you still have to say, I need to be ready for when I'm traditionally ready for. It also, if you start late, doesn't mean you have to end at the state tournament. There are other tournaments, particularly in April before things start to close down in May, where you could lengthen your season. Being remote and not being dependent upon hosting and making money on concessions, it is entirely possible to schedule mini meets after the state tournament happens if you want to give your kids a longer experience, if you want to secure your normal amount of NSDA points to help out your district, if you want to prep them for nationals, or just try to capture a whole different group. Some of that time gained back with your family may make a longer season more amenable or more understandable to your own circadian rhythm. We can attend out-of-state tournaments. Now, there are differences, there are pluses of this. Kids absolutely love these out-of-state tournaments, and then you take them to them and they actually decide they like Indiana a little bit more. But until they see it, they assume that the forbidden fruit is the most amazing fruit in the history of the planet. There is good debate out there, and there's not that much difference nationally on the speech world. What Indiana does in speech very easily translates out of state to major tournaments. In debate, it's important to remember that while not everything is good that is done out there, there are some things that they do very, very well. I highly respect a lot of their argument creation, their research level or detail of knowledge on how well they can answer questions, memorize their answers, focus on their answers. Those are things that I want my students to bring back. I don't love the speed and I don't love some of the gamesmanship that happens in there, but we can show that to the kids and we can talk to them and educate them about, hey, did you like that? And usually the answer is no. They're not going to bring that back. It's not going to be something that irks in because it's not good debate. Have them find the good debate, the good speech performance, the new ways of doing things, and you can strengthen your program by bringing those back. It's easier to attend because, number one, you don't have to travel. Almost all national tournaments and circuit tournaments are already virtual for the entire year. Some of you guys have been unable to attend those because your school has distances that your bus can't travel out of. That goes out of the way for this year. The second thing is the cost. Almost always you need to pay for a hotel room, typically in a big city, which is going to be very expensive and fills up very fast because you have to stay at theirs. There's no hotel cost. So the only barrier left is going to be fees. We are all going to have trouble fundraising, and I'm not sure if we have a session to talk about that, but that's something that we want to brainstorm, I think, as a community, because a lot of our fundraisers got knocked out because of the pandemic and what's going on with our communities. Be aware that a national tournament, fills up very fast. Instead of signing up a week beforehand, you typically need to sign up 3, 4, 5 weeks in advance. Second of all, it oftentimes costs a decent amount of money per team or per entry. Sometimes that's as much as $50 to $100 an entry. So you do have to be aware and be able to figure those types of things out. But with the hotel costs and the travel costs being taken away, there's the opportunity to attend a tournament in California or in Boston or in Florida, and find different elements of speech and debate which our kids will really like. The third thing to try is to connect with your community. We will all agree that it is better to connect with your community and showcase what we do. That if we can get the principal, the superintendent, the school board to see our activity, they will recognize the intrinsic value of it and be amazed at what our children can do. However, that's always been kind of difficult. We are going to be recording a lot of things this year. With parent permission, school permission, etc., there's no reason that you can't live stream community events. In fact, that's really good practice for a synchronous tournament for our speech kids, or have some sort of showcase debate element where they've got to get used to speaking to the camera. It's not necessarily guaranteed to be watched, but neither is when we do a showcase event and it's just our parents there. If we can get the superintendent or the school board just to watch half of one performance, there's an opportunity where that will pay dividends in the future once we're back to normal. And since we're going to be playing on cyberspace anyways, it's actually good practice for what we want the kids to do. And I firmly believe that the more people see what we do, the better it will be for us and more people will want to do this. That's an opportunity that we're presented right now. My fourth thing is team bonding. Many of us are going to be forced to ditch our traditional team bonding activities. And we can't just ditch it totally because we need to focus more on our kids' well-being and on their mental health than we ever had before. Chesterton High School is hybrid right now for 2 weeks. That means my A through K last name students have never in person met my L through Z. With the peer coaching that we do, that's wreaking havoc in everything that we do. They physically have not seen each other besides occasionally at a practice where half are in cyberspace. One of my favorite speech and debate traditions that goes back to when I was a student in Chesterton's program is we have a team picnic at a senior's house. Everybody brings food. There's some sports. They're sitting around and talking. There's literally nothing about competition in any way, shape, or form. It's a really good bonding experience where kids get to know each other. There's no way to do a picnic in a pandemic at this point in time at somebody's random house. I've got my students trying to figure out what else we can do. What can we do differently? We have projectors. We have movie screens. It's entirely possible that we can do a socially distanced in the parking lot movie. Those ideas are possibly better ideas than some of the traditional things that we've done. And once again, forces us out of our comfort zone and will encourage us to find new things, new ideas, that once we're back to normal, we can continue to incorporate the good. We can also laugh about the failures of the new traditions that we're going to attempt to do as they evolve over time. But if there was ever a year to try something different, to try something new with no risk, it's this year. So let's experiment. Now, personally, I don't think the Chesterton tournament model will change that much, but there are opportunities to change things in tournaments. I like to think about why we do things. And oftentimes, I think the reason we do tournaments the way we do it is because that's the way we've always done it. In debate tournaments, it is possible to do optional elim showcase rounds. These would be rounds where students have specifically okayed, particularly at the beginning of the year, of being observed or recorded. Obviously, there's got to be student and coach permission in this aspect, but think about the educational value that we could have of having a top flight early varsity round for all of our novices to be able to watch and use in the classroom. Not national final round videos, which are awesome, scare the heck out of our new kids because they say there's no way I can do that. It's also about a topic that they know nothing about. These optional elim rounds or these optional showcase rounds are opportunities where we could really help teach kids for the future. You could do rounds pre-designated for observers. You technically could do multi-day tournaments. Again, you're not going to have overnight people. You would have people option into this, as well as coaches, like, would you like to be considered for Sunday afternoon elim rounds? We'll do semis and then finals. I think occasionally that would be really cool for kids. You're not having the whole team stuck there who wants to get home. Instead, only the kids and those who want to be there to support them would have to do that. A tournament host would not need many judges, and there are ways to be able to do this. So I'm not saying that every single tournament should do this, but it's the possibility to tweak the system a little bit. Do we have to have 4 rounds in debate? Probably not. Maybe we do 3 for an early tournament. Maybe in the future we are able to use this model for after-school tournaments for schools and coaches that don't want to travel on a Saturday. In speech, there's a lot of options. Everybody's talking about synchronous and asynchronous, and I personally hope that there are both options throughout the year. I think it's pretty important that kids are be able to stand up and actually perform instead of just recording a video. Some of the educational value comes in that adaptation to the audience. Some of that value comes in performing multiple times, and we need to make sure that that's not lost. There are some tournaments that could do a combo where prelims are going to be pre-taped, but then finals are live. There's also models in different states called a festival model. This would work really, really well for nationals preparation, for instance, where we can have all of the oratories come in, and maybe there's 10 to 15. And instead of doing a round, we have whoever the tournament officials consider to be the best oratory coaches in there. So we get Dan Tyree, we get Robert Kelly, maybe from Minnesota, we get Joe Wyckoff in there. And they watch all 10 or 15 of those oratories. And instead of ranking them 1 through 15, you give them a rubric. You can talk about Pyramid 1, and you can talk about the writing, you can talk about the speaking, the eyes, the hands, and they give them a score on that rubric. With comments from them, that could be invaluable compared to a normal tournament setting where you're in a stacked round and you were awesome, but you got 5th. Hearing instead that you got 95 out of 100 of the points, and here's what you need to work on, could be a totally different model that could work very well in this situation. Particularly for nationals prep, where we all have a hard time getting together because of the time period and we're sick of traveling, a festival online model could be a huge advantage where kids only have to perform once or twice or pre-record it, and the coaches are then able to do it at their leisure. Everybody shares the responsibility. All of our kids can benefit from it. You could do pre-taped secondary events. I know the Ben Davis tournament likes to do some unique events that the kids love and are excited about, and they like to quad entry. You can do some live events and then some of these other events that are purely extra, that are not preparation for the IHSFA season. You could absolutely do those as pre-taped and pre-judged at different time periods, kind of the way that the secondary events at nationals are done. So there's options of how you do this. There's also room for kids to bond, whether you're in Zoom, whether you're in Flipgrid, 8x8, all of the other options that Ben Stewart will talk about that suggest running an online tournament is there. You can create rooms where kids can go in and talk, and you can be creative with some of this. I know Jeff Stutzman has occasionally done lip singing at a local tournament in his area. I know Crown Point had the kids do a dance-off. There's the opportunity to open up rooms for our kids to practice stand-up comedy and jokes, to just be kids, to talk, to do charades, to have a dance-off. And there's always the possibility to have more elim rounds in speech. Again, with the idea that if you qualified for the secondary break, maybe you're back on Sunday. You know, if they don't want to come back, they've got a function there, cool. We're focused on the educational value of this more than the competitive value, and that's how we're going to sell it to our kids and push it to our kids. So if our kids qualify it, we will applaud for that. If they can't make it on Sunday, cool. We'll go for it for the next tournament with the next model. And I think we should really think about experimenting and giving kids different options that are possible in this. It's also an opportunity to bring our program into this century. Just like the bus list, this list is honestly things that I personally need to do. I don't have a way for my kids to electronically sign up for work sessions. I still stick a sheet of paper up on my board after drawing a grid on Monday for 3 to 3:30 for my work sessions. That's not the kids' world. They don't live in that way. They don't necessarily decide I want to have a work session when they come into school Monday morning. They might decide Sunday at 2 a.m. I'm going to have to figure out a way to do an electronic sign up that works for them and me. And honestly, I don't think I'll ever stick that sheet of paper up once again because I need to adapt to them and I've become an old fogey. We really need to update our video library. At Chesterton, we still have VHS tape performances that we show kids how to do this type of stuff. That's pretty pathetic. Worse than that, I still have 1970 cassette tapes of our old oratories. Nobody's ever listened to them because we don't have a cassette tape player. We also still have a manual typewriter in our office. None of those should exist in a program in 2020, and it's time to remove the clutter, and it's going to be time to be able to figure out how to move our program into this century. You need to have a social media presence. It's important for recruiting, not only with your students, but with their parents and with the community members. Once again, with how much we're videotaping, we should be able to take that videotape and put in clips and quick little hitters and aspects towards things where we can promote ourselves better. For nationals, we were lucky enough to have Dylan Levitt in 2 of the secondary event semis, pros and 1 other. And instead of normal postings where I was just typing, Dylan Levitt made it to the top 12, because I was home, I had time to get on Canva, take a picture of him, and put up some really nice postings for it to kind of make it a little bit more special. You need to have a team communication tool. We all use school as the center base, and for many of us, that's been ripped away. I recommend Slack. It's what we use. It's what a lot of businesses use. Microsoft Teams works very well as well. Josh Coots has always pushed that as an aspect for it. It's a way of organizing conversations, meetings, updates, announcements. We got used to Slack when it got too difficult for Remind.com, and we had to cancel a tournament where we found out at like 2 a.m. because of a snowstorm that the bus barn was canceling it, and I still had to get up at 4:30 a.m. just in case none of the students checked on it, and I had to go physically to the school to turn kids away at 4:30 in the middle of a snowstorm for the 5 kids that had not realized it. Having a communication tool like Slack, which you can look at, it's free, it's slack.com, that's going to be something that can only benefit your program in the long run. You can empower your kids. I am guilty of this. We run a very coach-centric program with everything revolving around what the coach says. It's very, very authoritarian. I have worked hard to resist my own tendencies there to empower our kids. And this is the year to empower them. This is the year to tell your varsity, you remember what a normal experience was? We need to give that to these new kids. We need to give them more attention because it's going to be harder to retain them. We need to do more with recruiting and example building. Empowering your kids are key. Unfortunately, coach-centric programs don't outlive their coach. When that coach leaves, the program crumbles. We've had some examples already this year where it's shocking to hear that the school is no longer supporting it. And when you find out why, it's because a longtime Hall of Fame coach resigned. You need to make sure that if you're going to move or you're going to stop coaching, that there's a desire of running this among the kids where they can bring in a new coach who doesn't have much experience. I've mentioned before, to engage with your community better, also to accumulate resources that you need to help the kids that can't. I wandered into a very tenuous Facebook post fight over nationals with the main speech coach for Apple Valley. People were complaining about they had kind of a value because they had wireless mics, they had a little bit more support, and people were just assuming Apple Valley is a very rich school district. And while they do have some wealthy kids, they have a very high percentage of free and reduced lunch kids. He got very testy as people were accusing him of having a financial advantage. And what he quickly said was, I hustled. I went to the community and I told people, here's what I need. I don't need money this time. I don't need this for this, but I need mics. I need webcams. I need rooms. I need physical space. And he was able to reach out to community members and get those things for the kids so that he could supply it for them rather than just the kids buying it. If we get those resources, we'll hold on to those resources as a program, which will again only help us in the future. And so all of our budgets are going to be very, very different this year. For me, it's a very unknown, which is extremely scary. But I'm trying to accumulate capital and money and connections to be able to get that. Think about technology grants this year. Think about things like wireless mics, webcams, second screens, monitors, which are really good and beneficial for online debate. These are the types of things that our program should start accumulating at the very beginning to try to help our kids that can't pay for it themselves. And I think the huge advantage of this is learning this is going to allow us to practice debate significantly better. The IHSFA has a rule that 2 schools are not allowed to help against a 3rd school. So in debate, myself cannot contact Penn to work on Munster. That's an illegal action of 2 schools ganging up on another. However, you are perfectly fine helping other schools as long as you're not doing it against someone else. Online, you can organize an after-school practice debate from 3 to 4:30. Have your coach watch your own kids in an actual round scenario, which is an invaluable coaching resource for both sides. Both are going to gain from that. It's kind of like when an NFL team organizes a scrimmage against another club, so they're not just doing inter-squad scrimmages. That can be really, really valuable in the future. Go back to some quick hitters. It is hard to find judges. It is awful. We all try to use our alumni base, but a lot of our alumni move away from our towns and they're hard to find. I love tournaments at West Lafayette and Bloomington because a program my size always has enough alumni that I can get judges within an hour for that tournament to fulfill my quota. On an online tournament, geography is no longer a problem. For nationals, we reached out and Alex Bishop judged from Hawaii. Now, unfortunately, Jeff Stutzman, in charge of the policy chair, happened to schedule him for what local was 3:30 a.m. for a round. You do have to consider those aspects for it. He showed up for it, and he absolutely loved the round. You have alumni out there who would judge if they lived close. We can access all of them to be able to judge online tournaments. In some ways, this should make it actually easier and increase the quality of our judge pool for people who really want to do it, rather than these were the people you could find so that a kid did not get cut. Jeff, I was hoping you'd be in here. Huge benefit, no baked potatoes in any of my Chris Lowery's Judges Lounge. I think literally everybody loves the healthy baked potato idea but me, because if you've ever been to a tournament of me, ever since my first time in Tab where Bob Britton accused me of stealing his piece of pizza and threatened to kick me out of the coaching community, I eat pizza every single Saturday. You're going to be able to control your judge lounge, as your judge lounge is likely your school where you're competing out of, or it's your own personal house. And so if the judge food is bad, that's your fault. You also can think about all the parents that put in your work for your hospitality committee if you're used to hosting. You're not going to need them this year unless you host an in-person tournament, but that doesn't mean they're not willing to help still. Right there, you have an army of parents who will help you find the grants, find the equipment, find the ways to assist kids, because they're volunteering for one of the most difficult jobs, hosting a tournament, taking care of those judges, securing food, buying, purchasing, and they are great at it, those moms and dads. We can give them the year off, which is awesome, but that doesn't necessarily mean they get the year off of being a speech and debate parent. It's just another opportunity to figure out how to reuse your resources in different ways. But here's the last thing, and then we'll be able to discuss a couple of things for about the 10 minutes that are left. I joked before about our actual families. Our kids, our students are our kids. They need us, and they need us to have a good season. Whether you like it or not, you are their role model, and you are their leader. They will take their attitude, their thoughts, their experiences from how you are talking about this season. You need to be positive, and you need to ensure to them that while it's not going to be the perfect season, we're going to have a good season, and it's going to be a good experience. I know this is true of everybody else, but I'll speak to my own experience. I've had a lot of winners, and I've had a lot of non-winners. Both groups, when they come back to talk to me, they never talk about the color of their ribbons. They never talk about the size of the trophy that they earned. They never talk about whether they failed to win that trophy. They talk about the friendships, the experience, the academic skills, how much it benefited them. They talk about the jokes and the inside jokes, and they start revealing the things that you never knew happened in the program while they were in the program, which makes you gulp. But those are the things that they talk about. Ultimately, we still have an opportunity to give that to our kids. And we love them. We owe it to them. They are hurting just like we are, but they're kids and we're the adults. And so I hope that we can have a really amazing season, that we can make this a season that is extremely memorable for both the failures of the things that we attempt and the things that we succeed about. And at the end of the day, we can retain kids and we can graduate kids who got a good experience. So that's my case essentially for what I'm looking forward to in the season. Those are the things that I thought were beneficial, good, things that I had to remind myself of, oh my God, I don't have to drive a bus in any way, shape, or form. I don't know if you guys have questions about anything that I talked about. If anybody wants to share their experience, if they've gone out of state or already done online speech or online debate, where they can say, hey, here were some of the positives, or even here were pitfalls that I think are avoidable if we do things right. And so at this point, I will kind of turn it over to the group. Anybody who wants to share, speak, question, you are welcome to. Jeff, I do think most people love your Judges Lounge.
Well, you know, we haven't had baked potatoes in a while.
It's still healthy, though.
That is correct.
I should say no healthy food.
The year that we had baked potatoes, we made more money on our concession stand than we ever did with your pizza.
Yeah.
So, but that's okay. You know, I understand if you want your arteries to clog before you're 35. So.
Wait, you know, before I'm 35, I'm turning 40 this year.
You're not. You're that old?
Yeah.
Oh my Lord. Okay. Well, then I'll leave you alone anymore. Okay. I would say, I don't know if this ties in necessarily with it, but you know, one of the issues I think we all need to make sure we do with our online tournaments, whether they're synchronous or asynchronous, is the ability of our students with their backgrounds. You know, one of the things I noticed that with the national tournament, you know, were that it seemed to be the students that went a little further along had, I don't know if I'd say nicer backgrounds, or at least, you know, had thought through and put up some like sheets or something in the back to offer that, as opposed to some students who didn't have that capability because they were recording at homes and that sort of thing. And so I think we need to be cognizant of that You know, like I'm fortunate enough that my school's already told me that I can bring the students into school on Saturdays to do, even during competition, so I can give them each their own classroom to record and present from. I know not every school is going to be able to do that. So, you know, I have students at home that even when they log in to meet with me, their only real like quiet place they can do it is either their bathroom or their bedroom. And I think we need to be aware that they may not have that option to be able to put up those nice backdrops and things like that.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I'd like to add to just things that I'm positive about is, in a way, I feel a lot less anxious because I'm just going to take what comes, you know, like and that's how I'm feeling about my teaching. Like I'm taking some pressure off about like everything I have to do and all the standards I have to hit. And I'm just like, we're going to accomplish what we can accomplish. And everybody seems fine with that. And I've noticed as I'm trying to put my team together, normally at this time, I'd be very stressed about like, oh, I heard so-and-so is a dance captain for show choir and they might not come out and their duo partner doesn't like them anymore. Who's going to do duo? And now I'm just like, here's when we're practicing. Here's what's available. People who show up, we're going to work and we're going to have fun. And it's going to be what it's going to be, guys. And that's really liberating for me. I feel a lot less stressed about that kind of stuff now as I have in the past.
Yeah, this is not the year to put internal competition pressure on yourself, and definitely not to extend it to kids who are going through significantly worse stuff. I mean, I'm finding the same thing, Paul. Anybody think that they are willing or will think about trying with the tournament model something slightly different? Like the danger of trying something new is it spirals out of control and you have a tournament that ends at 9 p.m., which we've all been to. And you know, when that happens, it's rough. Anybody going to at least think about ideas of something different?
Yeah, I'm looking at the tournament we're hoping to host in November, and I'm sketching ideas. Nothing's official yet. Wait till you hear from me over SpeechWire. But I'm sketching ideas about like you could do either speech or debate, say Wednesday and Thursday evening. Like you run 2 rounds from like 6 to 8 p.m. on Wednesday and Thursday evening, and then you run whatever you didn't run, speech or debate, during the day on Saturday. So that way kids could do both. Because we've got a lot of kids who are interested in doing both a debate event and a speech event, and you could spread it'd be part of the same tournament, but you could spread it out over 3 or 4 days. Because the cost is per room per day. So even if you're using NSDA campus, it's per room per day. So if you lower the number of rooms that you're using on any given day because you spread those events out, I don't think it affects the price point very much, and it would create more opportunities for kids. Also, to get judges in, if you do stuff in an evening, then you can get judges in who normally have conflicts on Saturday and vice versa.
I like the idea. If you want ideas for how to do where kids can double in speech and debate, Missouri tournaments regularly do that. So that's their tournament model. It's usually 2 days. And it's a crazy amount of, like, I like your idea better because it spreads it out more. But you can look at some Missouri calendars and you will find some interesting ideas.
Yeah, kind of along the same line with what Paul was saying. I really liked, before nationals this year, because I wanted to test out the asynchronous part, I had some students participate in the mask tournament, which is normally called the NITOC tournament. And I really liked the format he had. So you uploaded your video, so it was asynchronous, but like round 1 and 2 took place from Wednesday to Thursday. I think I had a couple of like college kids, you know, so you would get your rounds to judge, and you might have 12 hours to do your judging. So it'd say, here they are. You just need to have your ratings, rankings, and comments posted by like 5 p.m. tomorrow evening. And then round 2 would begin, and he gave those judges another 24 hours. So then, on Saturday, if you potentially wanted to, then you could do a live, like semifinals, finals, etc. Session like that. Or as Paul mentioned, maybe you run the debate events live on Saturday, that gives students the opportunity to do both speech and debate for that tournament. I mean, I think there's some options that would offer some leeway, especially when it comes to finding judges and things like that.
Anybody else got anything to share, or you want to ask a question about something?
This isn't a but it is something to put on everybody's radar. I got to thinking about this when we were talking about, you could, even for an online tournament, bringing kids into the school and having them present at the school so they're a little bit more together or something. We were talking about this in our sectional meeting yesterday, purely anecdotal evidence, but all of the outbreaks and quarantines that I'm hearing about, at least from local schools, are not happening from the classroom stuff where there's really strict protocols in place. It's clubs and teams that are getting together outside of school, sometimes even without the coach's awareness. Sleepovers are happening and things like that, and that's where all of a sudden, we had a fall sports program that got shut down for like the whole team for like 15 days because they'd had an unsanctioned team get together after someone had been exposed. So that's what I'm kind of concerned about with any time we're bringing kids together. So it's just something to keep in mind, and also to communicate to your parents that, like, no, actually, if you want them to be able to compete, don't do that.
Well, and you definitely don't want to become the super spreader event. Like, so as we've been talking about what it will look like if we try to go to an in-person tournament, we're like, okay, we have to be able to keep our kids 6 feet apart because that's our baseline rule. And then we have to stay 6 feet apart away from everyone else. And so we're going to be looking for tournaments that are saying that is possible. And if the tournaments say that's not possible, then we go virtual.
Are there any tournaments that are not on the calendar yet that some of you are planning on hosting? Because I would love to.
For sure, Chesterton will host a speech and debate 2 different weekends. I'm meeting with my principal over a lot of things, and I kind of want to talk to him first. I was also waiting to just see where there are holes before deciding. But we'll commit for sure to an open weekend for both debate and for speech as an online tournament. Like I said, for the local schools, we're going to attempt to try to get in person. However, I got to get approval for that first before committing to it. But we will fill at least one of those holes in each.
I have a student doing her Girl Scout Gold Award that wants to host a female empowerment online meet. So that will probably be at the end of October or in November.
That's cool.
That sounds really cool, Holly.
Yeah,
considering my team is 99% female, we will probably be there. So.
Yeah.
So we are bringing back Girls Extemp then, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah. Have to figure out some of those events and how to best do them virtually.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's about 5 minutes left, and I think we've got other conference aspects next. So unless there's anybody else who has anything, or anybody else who wants to say they're going to add to the calendar.
Bethany, I do think Valpo's going to do something, but I think Mary was waiting until this weekend had happened before we approach admin. I can say with confidence we will not be allowed to have anything in person. But I think we were waiting until after this SpeechWire presentation this afternoon to kind of assess our options. So probably, I have no idea on the calendar. Mary always sets those up, so I don't know.
Jason also added something in the chat, and as did JD.
You know, Chris, we at Bethany have a very small building, and that's one reason we have to limit the size of our speech tournament in February. But if we go virtual, we could actually end up with a much larger tournament for debate than we could ever consider hosting in person. So that's actually one of those little silver lining possibilities for us.
I think everybody is probably in the same space that I am. where we know our traditional budget is not going to be accurate, and we're all probably having difficulty with fundraisers, et cetera, those types of things. One of the things to prepare yourself for, some Indiana tournaments are definitely thinking about charging small entry fees to help offset the cost of hosting. Just be prepared for that. You're also saving money if you're paying for buses, if you're doing hotels. Like that, there are costs that are gone, and there are going to be new costs, and nobody is quite sure what those aspects are. But just be conscious of that, and pay attention to the registration, pay attention to SpeechWire options, those types of things. If you have not had the chance to hear Ben Stewart speak about online tournament service platforms, I highly recommend his session. He did one that you could jump on in the summer, and it was really, really informative and made me feel really good about the possibility of hosting an online tournament. He made it sound very, very doable. And that's later on today. All right. Well, thank you for attending this. I hope we all have a wonderful, wonderful season, the best season that we can make it.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. Good session.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
JD, if I close, it's not going to mess up the recording. It'll still cloud save and go to wherever it's supposed to go.
Yes, it will.
Okay.
You're just a participant. It's actually Sarah's meeting because she was able to start record.
All right. Perfect. See you later.
See ya.